So let's change the world today.
Hello and welcome to Don't Keep Mum the podcast. Today we're really lucky to be talking with Lucy from Mrs. H's Favourite Things. Hi Lucy. So why don't you do a little bit of an introduction about who you are and how you came to be, because you've been blogging for so long. Like I've got so much to learn from you, but you've also gone on quite a big journey, and where you are today isn't exactly where you started off, is it?
No, not at all. So I'm Lucy, otherwise known as Mrs. H from Mrs. H's Favourite Things. And I don't really blog so much anymore, but when I started my blog, I think it was back in, 2013 or something. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I originally did it as a form of therapy. I was signed off work for 3 months with depression and anxiety, and I was getting counselling, and we were talking one day, and I was saying that one of the things I really, really struggle with when I'm depressed is seeing the good in the world, or seeing the things that actually make me happy. So like having a warm cup of tea or reading a good book, those are little things that make me happy, and I can't see them because I'm so bogged down in the depression. And she said, well, why don't you start writing it down? I said, yeah, I could do that. And she said, why don't you blog about it, because it would really help other people.
And is the idea that if you write it down, then you can start to visualize it?
Yeah, I think the idea was if I wrote it down, then it would be kind of out there in the world, as it were, and it would be a reminder for me to go back and look at on those days when I am feeling rubbish, and I am really bogged down with the depression, and I can't see the joy that is in the world. But having it written down, it's like there in black and white. I can't ignore it. I can't hide from it. More about those little things that make me happy. The fact that I got a new mug that was quite exciting, that made me happy. Why rainbows are so important to me, and things like that. So there's so much that is making me happy at the moment. But I think one thing, the direction that I'd like to go in is I have spoken at a few events about my experience with depression and anxiety, because I have chronic depression and anxiety. It's never going to go away. I will have it for the rest of my life, and I'll probably be on medication for the rest of my life. And it took a while, but that's something I've totally accepted. And I've accepted that depression and anxiety are a part of me. I'm not ashamed of that. It's just who I am. So I've spoken at quite a number of events about depression, being a parent with depression and anxiety, how to cope, how to build up sort of toolkit to look after yourself. I've spoken about the fact that I do take medication, what that means to me, and how I became a parent, because that's quite a journey in itself, because it wasn't an easy decision to make, and it wasn't one that just involved my husband and I. My psychiatrist had to be involved in it as well, so it was quite a long journey. So I've spoken at events about that, and that's really important for me, to be able to share my story and just help somebody, anybody.
I think that's one. I mean, the thing is, I think about kind of the average person that doesn't really suffer with anxiety on kind of any extreme, would struggle with doing those things, and yet there's something in you. There's this kind of you're proof that just because you're anxious doesn't mean that you're not brave. you have this
No.
like, fiery bravery inside you that you fear things and you still do them anyway.
Oh, I'm absolutely terrified. Before I speak at any event or do a video or a podcast or anything, I'm absolutely terrified. And I have this real strong feeling inside, like, why me? Why am I doing this? Why am I good enough to be doing this? I'm just Lucy. I'm just like, I'm nobody. But then I think, you know, you are Lucy, but you've come a really long way. Like, the person you were as a teenager and in your early 20s is not the person you are now at 42. You're a completely different person, and that journey is really inspiring. And there are people who would like to hear about that and hear about how you manage every day to get up in the morning and look after your kids and keep the house clean, although my husband would probably argue that I don't keep the house clean. Get them to school on time and just be their mum, and also at the same time try and hold myself together and do all those things that I have to do in order to get through each day, because there's a list of stuff that I have to tick off.
And so valid, like even the mundane stuff, you know, that you're talking about, like that everyday, like tidying and just, you know, the just being a mum. I can imagine, like, if you think it's somebody that is following along the same kind of journey as you, but they're in their 20s and their 30s, to hear from you to say, look, I'm in my 40s and we've got this, don't worry, like it's going to be bumpy, but we're gonna get through it. That must be huge.
Yeah. Someone who I'm quite good friends with now, but originally she was just a follower of my blog, and it was like she was going through everything I had been through, but 5 years previously to me. So she'd gone through the depression and anxiety and the nervous breakdowns, etc., and then she'd had the miscarriages and things, and I was able to really speak to her and go, yeah, you know, times are really hard sometimes, some days that you just do want to stay in bed and cry, but you will get up and you will get out of the house and you will be okay. And if you want to have those children, there's nothing stopping you from having those children. Just because you have a label of depression or anxiety, it doesn't mean that you can't be a brilliant mum, that you can't be an absolutely brilliant parent. There's nothing stopping you.
Yeah.
And if anyone tells you otherwise, then, you know, send them in my direction.
It's true, because there are plenty of people that have, for example, chronic kidney conditions that have kids. You know, that
Exactly.
people that have diabetes that have kids. You know, that they have lifelong conditions that they have to manage and they have to keep on top of, and it's kind of just understood. I think a lot of it is to do with education and with a lack of kind of platform for people to talk about it. But people do question it, and they do kind of. There is that kind of stigma around having a family and having children, and whether or not that, you know, that should be your right. But there is, they're exactly the same. You know, you're managing your condition, like you say, you take your medication, and your children are two of the most gorgeous, clever, beautiful babies I've ever seen.
They're pretty cute.
You've done an amazing job with them. You know, they're so well-rounded and extremely intelligent, and that all comes from, you know, the person that's guiding them through, which is you.
Well, they're amazingly emotionally intelligent, which is really, really important to us. And something that I also talk about a lot is the fact that we've never hidden my depression and anxiety from them. Obviously, when they were babies, they didn't really understand. But as soon as they understood, we started talking about it, and we started talking about it in language that they could kind of understand. So little Miss H, Sophie, used to say that she had an owie when she hurt herself. So we used to say that mummy has an owie in her heart that makes her sad. And then eventually we thought, oh gosh, she's going to think I've got heart disease or something. So we changed it. So now we call it mummy's sickness that makes her sad. And she can understand that. They both can understand sickness, illness, and that they understand that you have different sicknesses and illnesses. You have colds, that you have tummy bugs, you have tonsillitis or whatever. And they understand that my particular illness, and it's not going to go away, makes me sad and can make me grumpy sometimes and impatient with them and can make me tearful. And I do cry in front of them because I don't want to hide who I am as their mum, as their parent. And I think it's important that they see that emotions are good.
Yeah.
Because I really strongly believe this. All emotions are good. It's the reactions to them that can be bad.
Yeah.
But feeling an emotion in itself is fine. So feeling anger as an emotion, is natural to feel that. But if you then go and whack someone in the face, that's the wrong thing to do. So that's how we've brought our kids up, and because of that they have an amazing emotional intelligence that I'm just so proud of. And so when I go to a parents' evening, I don't really care if they go, oh, they're not very good at spelling, but all I want to know is, are they kind?
Yeah.
Are they kind to their friends? And when they tell me that they are, I'm just like, oh, I'm so proud.
And that's a life skill that's going to get them through. And having that like you say, that level of emotional intelligence is epic, and possibly, like, for our generation, something that was quite lacking, because our parents, they weren't ever taught really to process their thoughts or feelings, were they? So we were a little bit better, but we still came as the aftermath of that. So to have children that are being raised to understand not only their own emotions but somebody else's, I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, if Sophie and Elliot choose to become parents at whatever stage of life they are, they'll be absolutely amazing ones who'll just embrace their children for whatever they're like, and love them, and I just think they'll be brilliant. Basically.
They are really, really gorgeous. And rainbows feature a lot in what you do. Do you want to explain why? Because they're not your logo, but they almost are like a part of kind of what you use to encompass who you are.
So my blog tagline used to be finding happiness and chasing rainbows. And rainbows for me, it became a symbol after I had my first miscarriage, which I had back in 2013, before Sophie was born. No, sorry, 2012, before Sophie was born. And suddenly I became aware I was part of a baby loss community that I'd never been part of before. And I was embraced by these women who'd suffered similar things. And it was amazing. It was so supportive. It was so tragic at the same time, but so supportive. And I became aware of this term called rainbow baby, and I'd never heard of it before. And it's basically a baby that's born after the storm of miscarriage. So as a rainbow follows a storm, a rainbow baby follows the storm of miscarriage. And it became something that was really hopeful. And then I did get pregnant again, and although it was quite a worrying pregnancy at times, Sophie was born, and that was amazing. That was wonderful, and she was just this miraculous bundle of joy and hope, and rainbows became kind of a bit of a thing for me. And then I had 3 further miscarriages before we had Elliot. And then I got pregnant with Elliot. And again, it was really rocky. I had lots of bleeding and things like that. But every time I had a scan or I had some kind of worry where I needed to see the doctor, there was a storm and a rainbow appeared. It was just like, it was a sign.
Yeah.
And every time we were told the baby's okay, the baby's got a heartbeat, we don't know what the bleeding was, but it all looks fine. And then on the day that Elliot was born, a double rainbow appeared over this hometown that we live in. And it's just like, it was meant to be.
Yeah.
So for me, chasing rainbows is chasing my rainbows, running after my children, but also chasing the joy in life and the hope in life, because I think it's so important when you suffer from depression and anxiety, when you're going through a really rough patch in your life, that you do look for the happiness, because there is happiness. And I totally understand that sometimes you are so depressed, you just cannot see it. And if you do feel that way, then you need to see a doctor. But sometimes to just think, you know what, actually having a cup of tea makes me happy.
Yeah.
Having a bath, going and taking a long bath, that makes me happy.
Yeah.
Watching a film that I've watched zillions of times and I'm bound to cry at, but also will laugh and love, stupid romantic comedy or something, that will make me happy. And even if it is a brief glimpse of happiness in the darkness, it's still really important. And that's what rainbows symbolize. They are that brief moment of joy and hope that appears after a storm. And yeah, they're not always there, but sometimes they are, and they're absolutely amazing. So
I think it's and they're natural, aren't they? They're not forced. They just happen when you least expect them. They're infinite, aren't they? They're, you know,
yes,
they're circles. So they go on forever. You know,
exactly.
they're of light, which is what we're all of. Yeah, I think it is such a lovely symbol to use. I've watched you in particular. I know this past year has been a horrendous year for everybody, and especially for people that are kind of, you know, if you're dealing with mental health issues, or if you're at that point where you were just first trying to reach out to kind of get any kind of medical assistance. It has been a bad year. But the past 2 years, I've seen a complete shift in you and the way that it's so difficult to know how to say it, but I see you're managing yourself a lot better. But I can see you almost step back so much and finding those things, like the reading, the makeup, the earrings, you know, the exercising, all these really, really conscious little things that you're doing, not to an extreme. I've just seen you add in these little tiny bits of joy into your life, and you're one of those people. And I feel like this is probably why you have these periods where you get so sad, but you're one of the most empathetic people that I know. And I feel like you have so much emotion in you, but you feel other people's emotions. So when I've never ever seen you act or say anything passive aggressive. So like most people these days, they have that, like, even though they want to be happy for you, like if they see somebody having like a really good moment, if they're not feeling great, there's always that little jab. I've never seen that from you. You're always one of those people that kind of almost, you get your light from other people's joy and other people's celebrations.
Well, it's interesting because I was actually talking about this with a friend today on Instagram, that my best friend, who I met when I was 24, and she was my bridesmaid and everything, she actually gave birth on the day that I was in hospital having my miscarriage medically managed. And yeah, I was hurting immensely, but I still went and met her baby 2 days after she was born and hugged her. I did have a cry while hugging her, but I was so happy for my best friend because I knew how much that baby was wanted, and she hadn't had an easy pregnancy. So, and I felt sad for me. Yes, I felt sad for me. It was only natural that I felt sad for me. And I'd just been through a pretty traumatic event in my life. But I was just filled with so much joy for my best friend. There was just joy pouring from her. She was so happy. She was in this newborn bubble of bliss. And I just was so happy for her. And I think I can't really be passive aggressive. I know this sounds really like, oh my God, I'm blowing my own trumpet, but I don't really know how to. I'm kind of scared of it.
I think that is one of the things that defines your character, though. You are, I don't think you can help but express your emotions. So you're not somebody that represses how you feel at all. It kind of it leaks out of you naturally. So you don't have to kind of let off steam in a snarky way. You know, when you're happy, you're happy. When you're sad, you're sad. And that's the great thing about your posts on Instagram and about the blog that you had, is that you always said how you felt.
Yeah, and I always do. And I think this is something I've learned. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety when I was 19. It was originally a different diagnosis, but eventually the diagnosis became depression and anxiety. And so I'm now 42, so I've had it for quite a long time. I've probably mathematically have had more of my life with depression than without depression. And so I've learned how to cope with it. I've learned how to deal with it. And one of my early coping mechanisms was that I would tell people really quickly when I met them that I had depression, and I would sort of tell them my life story because if they left, if they couldn't cope, I had no emotional attachment to them whatsoever. I wouldn't get hurt, because I had lots of friends who, when I'd had my diagnosis and when I was really, really ill at university, and I was really, really ill, they couldn't cope. I mean, it was understandable. They were young, I was young, seeing some of the stuff that they had to see. It wasn't fair on them and they couldn't cope, but obviously losing them hurt me. So I created this defense mechanism where I would tell people. And it's a very famous night when I met my husband. I immediately blurted out, was like, I've got depression and blah, this is my life story, blah, blah, blah. And he just turned to me and went, yep, but are you going to ask me a question about me? And from that moment on, I knew he was a keeper, because he was completely unfazed by it and was just a bit self-absorbed, aren't you? But just because of that, I think I'm now so open with my emotions. Yeah. I'm very much like, yeah, this is a really shit day. I'm having a really shit day. Or
and that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. But equally, it's also okay to say, I have depression and anxiety, but I'm happy.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think there's a real stigma that people with mental health problems have to be sad all the time.
Yes.
And that's not always true. You go through bouts of really bad depression, yeah, but you also go through moments where you're really joyous. I mean, I've given birth to 2 beautiful babies. I've had an amazing day when I got married. There was a moment of pure joy that I could not have felt more joy and more happiness than I did on those days. And just because I suffer from depression doesn't mean that I can't be happy.
Yeah.
And so I'm a really big believer in also saying, you know, I am happy today, and that's a good thing, and I should shout it from the rooftops.
100%. I think as human beings, we do have this tendency to over kind of box ourselves or other people, because it's easier for us to process it if we just say, okay, this person is this and I'm this. It's so much easier to work it out. We don't have to work our way through the grey areas.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, because I had a similar conversation with Lisa from Hollybobs, who suffers from chronic fatigue, and she was saying that she almost feels guilty for her good days, because she can't understand that she can have chronic fatigue but have days where she has energy. Do you know, like it doesn't, just because she has a good day doesn't mean that she's suddenly miraculously cured.
Absolutely. But
it must be the same for you, and you're constantly having to like reiterate it all the time if you're trying to like work this very specific box out, which nobody fits into.
I do feel like that. It's like, if I say I'm happy or I'm having a good day, or, you know, I don't automatically then turn around and throw my antidepressants away. I know that it's just that I'm having a good day. And one thing I've really learned on my journey with my depression and anxiety is that I can have normal emotions. So for years and years, I struggled with the fact that if I was sad, I was depressed. That's what I thought. When I had the miscarriages, I didn't just have grief, I had depression.
Yes.
But actually, you know, people without chronic illnesses have bad days. They have days where they don't want to get up in the morning. They have days when they cry and they're tearful, or they're nervous about something, and so it's okay for me to have bad days. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm fully depressed.
Because
there are days.
There's a big difference between being extremely sad and having extreme sadness.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And it took me a long time to understand that, and there are days when I still really struggle with it, but I've really tried to teach myself that it's okay to have emotions, and it doesn't necessarily mean I'm really ill again. And so that's why it's important for me to embrace the days when I'm happy, because it's okay to be happy. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm cured, but I'm having a good day. So
and it is again, it's one of those things that I think other people also need to be schooled on, because it's about managing expectations, isn't it? Like, you've had to learn to manage your expectations, but other people need to also understand what those are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's no more terrible phrase in the English language than the words "I'm fine." I just think, I'm fine. I just think, say how you feel. And also mean what you ask. So if you ask someone, how are you, genuinely want to hear the answer. And if you don't say it, just say hello.
It is a bit of a cultural thing though, isn't it?
It is a cultural thing. And I think it's something that we really have to try and combat, and so people can.
My husband Yanni, it was one of the first things that he noticed. Is like, people say, "Are you okay?" and they carry on walking. Is that not a cue for us to stand and chat for a second?
No, exactly.
In Greece, like every 5 yards you stop and you have a conversation, you ask them, and you start it with "Are you okay?" and that begins the conversation. There's like they don't even look you in the eye, like they say it as they're moving away from you.
Yeah, exactly. And you just go, I'm fine.
Yeah, we're trained that like we're to be polite, but we really don't want to know. Like,
Exactly.
we don't want you to know how we feel, and we don't want to know how you feel.
And I think you're reading a book at the moment called The Authenticity Project,
Yes.
and that's very much part of that book. It's a brilliant book. It's fictional, but it's fantastic.
This is what I wanted to ask you, because we're coming to the end now. So, Lucy Loves. What's your favourite book? What would be your number one book recommendation?
It's a toss-up between To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee and The Green Mile by Stephen King. Both books I could read every single year of my life quite happily.
Lipstick. What would be your number one recommendation for lipstick?
Oh my gosh. Dior do really good lipsticks, and MAC. So I don't have a favourite necessarily. I love a red lip. Yeah. But you have to make sure you get the right red lip for you.
Yeah, I love Ruby Woo. I love Ruby Woo. That's my all-time favourite, red by MAC.
Yeah, they're brilliant. That MAC and Christian Dior are fantastic lipsticks. But if you want to get a red, you have to get the right red for you, because some people have reds that have bluish tones in them, and some people need reds with yellowy tones in them.
What would be your big statement piece? Like what's your power item that you wear that makes you feel good?
It is my earrings, and I only got my ears pierced about a month before my 40th birthday.
I know.
And that is because I used to argue with my mum so much over getting my ears pierced, and she would go, you get your ears pierced when you're 30. And then eventually I managed to get her down to 18, but by the time I was 18 I was just not bothered. So I got my ears pierced a month before my 40th birthday, and now I just love earrings. They just make me feel so much happier, and that's why I got them pierced, because I walked into a Monsoon store one day, saw a pair of earrings and thought, if I wear them, they'll make me really happy. And so that's why I got my ears pierced.
They're easy, aren't they? They are, like, earrings always fit.
Yeah, and they go with everything.
Yeah, they are the perfect little bit of joy just to add in. That's the end of our session. I'm so glad that we recorded this. It's so lovely to catch up with you.
Thank you so much.
I can't wait.
It's been lovely.
I miss you.
I know. I want us to go out and drink mimosas.
Yeah. The last time that we went out, we went for like brunch, didn't we? It was so lovely. I remember like afterwards, I felt so free and so good. It was I miss that. I miss people.
I miss people too.
So let's change the world today.